drawn in December. There we go. I think we've gone live. So we'll wait a few minutes, I think, won't we, just to see how people join. I think we may as well get going. Make a start. So hello and welcome to the third Atkins and Me event of the year. And today's a particularly exciting one as we close 2020, as we're joined by Atkins CEO Richard Robinson.
Hi, Rose.
Hello.
Thanks for having me here.
Yes, nice to have you. So before we get going with the questions and discussions, I'll just start by introducing myself. So my name's Rose Whitfield and I'm a graduate civil engineer within infrastructure. I've been at Atkins for 3 years now, having done some work experience placements and also a year in industry actually when I was at Bath University. And in the last 3 years, I've worked on some very exciting projects in the UK and in the Middle East. But I've been quite lucky to work with the early careers team in the last year, sort of helping to promote engineering to design to young professionals and to attract people into the industry and to Atkins. And I know this is something also, Richard, you feel quite passionately about. So we'll discuss that later on today, I'm sure. The plan today is to do about 20 minutes of discussion with yourself, and then we'll have around 10 minutes or so at the end to answer any questions that come in. So feel free to put your comments in the chat, and hopefully we can answer some of them at the end of the session. So, Richard, it's been almost a year now since you joined the company, and I'm sure it's not quite the year that you had expected. But if you could just give us, a bit of a background really on your career history and how your previous roles and experiences have led you to be CEO here at Atkins.
Rose, hi, thanks, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for either tuning in now or listening at some point in the future, possibly. So yeah, it has been a fairly unusual year, hasn't it? To say the least. And I joined almost a year ago, a year and a couple of weeks ago, as Atkins UK and Europe CEO. Prior to that, my early career, actually, I'm a chemical engineer by trade, and I spent my early career in the northeast of England working for ICI, and I think that sort of great induction and upbringing into engineering is something that sticks with me and sets a lot of my thinking. And I think we do, Atkins has a similarly great induction and graduate early careers program for graduates and apprentices. I did about a decade in the chemical industry. I did an international MBA sponsored by Sainsbury Management Fellows. For those of you who don't know who they are, go and Google them. They're a fantastic organisation, organised and by the Royal Academy of Engineering. And then latterly in my career, I moved into the transportation and infrastructure sectors, and I worked for one of our big competitors for a number of years, Atkins' big competitors. Then I did last year. I was working for a small project you may have heard of as Chief Operating Officer called HS2, and that was a fantastic experience. And I did that because I felt it was really important to understand, get the perspective of a client in our industry, so that when I worked in a role like this, I would really know what it was like to deliver a major infrastructure project. And then the fantastic opportunity to join Atkins came along, and with the brand and the great people and the amazing track record and actually where Atkins was in leading digital, which is very important to me, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So it was too good an opportunity to turn down.
Definitely. And what was your first sort of impression then of Atkins when you did actually join?
Yeah, well, I think, Rose, as you know, we met fairly on, didn't we? One of the groups of staff that I got together to really listen and learn more about the company, and I was really massively impressed with the standard of our staff, our technical capability, how well we bring select and bring people into the company and then help them to develop. That came through as a really strong thing in Atkins, which was wonderful to hear. And then my impression about digital, and that Atkins was at the forefront of digital transformation in the industry, actually was taken to an absolutely new level when I got to see some of the things we do. Where we work for some of the most confidential, high security clients in the UK, delivering their digital transformation programs. We do things like we work for some of the biggest airports, doing their AI-driven facial recognition programs. So some of the things you wouldn't typically expect a company that works in our sector to do. So I was just really taken aback by that. So it was fantastic to see.
I think it was a real positive. I know you mentioned at the beginning when you joined, we had those forums, and I know that you spoke to basically a whole range of employees across the business and had those one-to-one where you got that initial feedback to really understand how everybody felt, really, and to see what areas we could improve on. So I think that was a really positive. Now, many people, I'm sure, will be interested to know sort of what a typical week looks like for you as CEO, and I'm sure it's changed quite a lot since when you did start a year ago to now when we're working in this virtual environment. But what would you say your sort of typical week was like?
I think I'd like to know what a typical week is like at the moment, Rose. Actually, so I mean, look, there's two sides to that, aren't there? That I think one of the great things about working at Atkins is there aren't too many typical weeks, given the breadth and depth of what we do, how many brilliant people we've got. There's always something new and interesting to look at, and then obviously with the overlay of the pandemic on top of that, there haven't been too many typical weeks right now. I think what is typical is as most of us have, is coming down our stairs or out of our bedrooms and coming to the same little place that we work out of every day, and we're on Teams or Zoom, and I can't wait for that to be over. It means that it's a big part of how I work and what I do is to meet our teams and get to know people, and this has been a bit restrictive on that front, obviously.
And I guess that sort of leads into this debate really around sort of flexible working and the workplace of the future, because as you said, it's been quite restrictive. Obviously the fact that we had to go overnight, so all just working from home and working in this sort of virtual environment. But then there's also been lots of benefits, and I know that lots of employees have found that balance of work life as well has changed. So obviously we've got that challenge of keeping our workforce safe, but keeping them engaged and skilled as well. So that kind of leads on to what would you say really our workplace of the future will look like next year, and will we ever really go back to the 9 to 5 Monday to Friday job that we all are so used to before?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think we did. It's a testament to how flexible actually we were set up in Atkins. Anyway, with 20 to 30% of staff working remotely at any one time. Anyway, it enabled us to move our 10,000 UK&E staff working effectively from home. And I think that's an important word: working effectively from home in a matter of days. We really didn't miss a beat in terms of delivery for clients, project work, etc., bidding, all the things that make the business work. So that was that was amazing to see, and it was the result of already been on a long way down a flexible journey. I think to answer your question more directly, we've all filled in some surveys that we put out to our staff a couple of times during the pandemic just to see how everyone was feeling about how they might want to work in the future. And I think there's a good consensus coming together that there's not many people really relish getting back to a sort of 9 to 5 day a week commute. To go and sit in an office, but nor is there much appetite either for everyone to be sat permanently remotely. So I think we all value that some time in the office, whether that's 2 to 3 days a week, and the office will become more of a collaboration space. It's a well-worn word, isn't it? But in a space where you meet your team, you work together, you get some stuff done together that you need to do as a team. You that real creative side. And then the sort of the more where you have to just focus and sit down and work. We've had our discussions, haven't we, Rose, where a number of people have said, actually get more done if I'm working from home and I need to focus on something, I can get more done because there's not so many interruptions. So I think we'll find a nice balance in there, and I think it'll be better for everyone.
I think yeah, there'll definitely be benefits to both, and I think people will then, again, it's that flexibility that now it's kind of opened people's eyes to realize that, yeah, you could plan your week around that, and you can have your 3 days in the office and your 2 days from home, and really get the most out of both. And I know, yeah, we've discussed the fact that it sort of takes a global crisis or a pandemic sometimes to actually make us kind of think further ahead quicker. You know, as you said, this happened sort of overnight, where we were forced to make this change, and that's I guess a positive. It shows us as a company how kind of resilient we were to be able to react that fast.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? I think if there's one thing I will keep repeating to myself, and probably endlessly to my team, and drive them mad with it, is the if we'd have planned to do this, to all switch working remotely, we'd probably have planned it for a year. We'd have thought about it for another year. We'd have worried about all the risks. We'd have filled out risk registers. We'd have done a lot, and we probably wouldn't have been particularly seamless when we did it. Yet when the crisis struck, we managed to do it in 2 or 3 days. And as I said earlier, work it and almost not miss a beat. And that just tells me that when how rapidly we can drive wide change is stunning when we really have to, and we must retain that. You can't do that everywhere because it'd be chaotic, but you can pick 1 or 2 big transformational things like digital, for example, where you apply that sort of mindset, I really intend for us to do that.
Definitely. So I guess that kind of leads on to, really, we're talking about now working in a virtual environment. Now with early careers, and when I was 16, I was able to do work experience here, which was hugely beneficial to me. It helped me sort of pick my GCSEs, decide what I wanted to do. And I found that Atkins have been really invested in young professionals, and really sort of value our opinions from day one, and sort of see us as future leaders, which was a huge attraction for me to coming to Atkins. Interestingly, in the world that we're sort of now living in, I guess it's the abilities and skills that we're looking for when we're recruiting younger engineers and other disciplines has sort of changed. So I guess my question is, what would you say were sort of the key abilities and skills that we feel our next generation of young professionals will need?
Yeah, I think it's a really great question, and it's one we're working on internally at the moment. So I think there's a number of things that don't change. So being proactive, being curious, wanting to improve things every day, being just basically super smart and good at your core discipline, whether that's engineering or consulting or environmental science, or any of the number of things we do. All of that, those things don't change, and will be super important to being successful in our company anyway. I think there's then a question, isn't there, of how do we take the advent of true digital, where the internet speeds, processing power, storage have all reached such a point that we can start to apply machine-driven learning, AI, etc., which really up the speed and insight to which we can do things if we choose to use those tools. And those will be the areas that will be new in terms of skills, and how do we use that digital insight that will give us to be basically do things quicker and better and cheaper than we have done in the past.
I guess it's about sort of that adaptability, isn't it? It's about being adaptive and being able to respond quite quickly to change. I think that's, not just from the pandemic point of view, but as you said, very much from a digital point of view, and how fast things are moving. I think when you're coming into a job as a young professional, it's about being able to be resilient and adapt quickly, because as you said, these things are changing so fast. So looking back at yourself as an early career professional, if you could give one piece of advice, what would it be to yourself and to future employees?
I think the advice I would give is something that I probably did without really realizing it, but then after a while started to understand that about myself, which was I've always looked to try and understand what gaps I've got in my experience, and then fill in those experiences with the next role or the next opportunity, rather than chasing promotions, which can be successful and is successful for some people, But I think if you can understand where you want to get to, what gaps you have in experience, and then look for ways to fill those experiences in, you'll become a much more rounded person, and those promotions will come. So it's much more around. I've always found experiences are much more important than anything else.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good piece of advice, actually. I think, especially when you start out in your career, I think it's so important to learn from everybody around you, and help that build a picture. And rather than going in knowing, I mean, I guess it's to have a drive, but often we start learning once we start at a company. Then you start really seeing the different avenues you can go in. And I guess it's important to look at those gaps in your knowledge and your experience and chase those. I think that's a really important point. I think it's really useful advice.
Yeah, I was on that. I did a little slot on our graduate induction event last week, and that was just I was just reflecting on that actually over the weekend, which is why I mentioned it now. That's wow, what we've maintained. I will talk about in a moment. I know we've maintained our graduate program. Anyone who follows me on LinkedIn will know that Atkins has committed and maintained every single graduate and apprentice offer we made in 2020. We have to delay some, but not by too much, hopefully. But I'm really proud that we're able to stick with that commitment. It's really important to me for the future of the people we made the offers to, but the future of the business as well. And we've just launched our program for 2021, which is pretty much almost at the same scale. And again, we've had just an enormous response to that, which is fantastic. But I think I was just going to say, as I was reflecting on how hard it is for early career staff starting right now, graduates and apprentices. I mean, I remember vaguely when I started and just been able to sort of follow people around and do what they did was enormous help to me when I was a new graduate, and that's something we're really having to work hard on to help our new starters.
Yeah, it's so different. I've had quite a few friends who've started jobs, and it's so hard. It's so hard because that natural networking that you do on a daily basis that you don't even realize that you're doing, just walking past someone, making a cup of tea and talking to people, you absorb so much that it's a skill in itself to keep that going whilst you're working virtually constantly. You've really got to make the effort to do it rather than let it come naturally. So yeah. So on a big topic this year, and I know we've spoken a lot about it, diversity and inclusion has rightly so been a focus for companies, and to sort of take an honest look really at themselves and see how we can look to ways to sort of continuously improve in this area. I know Atkins is doing a huge amount here. So what can you give us a bit more of an idea of the sorts of things the company is doing to sort of grow that focus on diversity in our people and promoting this inclusive culture?
Yeah, we were sort of interestingly at the end of our sort of previous EDI strategy it was a 3-year program, and it's sort of last year was this year. So we were going to look at that anyway, and then the Black Lives Matter and George Floyd really brought what we that thinking to the fore. I just to try and educate myself really. I didn't do any, you'll know, I did, Rose, remember I didn't do any internal comms really for a little while on that, and I got questions about why haven't you said something about what happened with George Floyd. And I said, well, I just I don't want to do empty promises. I want to talk to our Embrace network, our BAME network, and really just understand how they feel. How do we do as a company, and how do we do as a society, and what do they see, and what are the problems they see, and I want to build from there and understand that before I come out to our company and externally and say what we're going to do. And we're still working on that. We've got support from an external company called the Clear Company to help us with that. We've got all of our EDI networks involved in the formulation. That was important to me, that they're intimately involved in the formulation of our plans for the next few years, not just something I on my team dream up in a room and put out there. That didn't seem the right approach to me. So I think we're taking a little bit more time to get our plan straight. We're doing some things in the meantime, some quick wins as they are. But really, I think when that extra time we've taken over it will mean we get something much more meaningful going in the next, literally this month actually.
Yeah, definitely. There's been a huge spark of conversation. I think that's the main thing. Everybody's really talking to each other about it, and that's the part that needs to be encouraged, because the more people talk, yeah, the more we'll learn, and then the easier that plan will be to promote that culture. And I think that's a very positive thing for me. Is I feel like Atkins is a very inclusive culture. It does feel that way, and I think it's heading definitely in the right direction there. So
we've got some work to do, Rose. I think that was the reflect my reflections and talking to our BAME community network. That we are a great company, and we have got a fantastic culture, but we've definitely got some things to do, and we're going to work on that.
Yeah, definitely. So looking ahead, I know we've spoken briefly about digital, and I know Atkins are doing a large amount in the digital space, and ultimately it's kind of transforming the way that we kind of use technology and data, really. Will you be able to tell us a little bit more, I guess, about the sort of digital transformation work that Atkins are doing, and from your experience, how do you think that will sort of change and shape how we deliver our work and our projects?
Sure. We've got what's called our Digital Future Program that has our 4 big moves in it. Those are design transformation, so completely transforming the way design is done, which is a big part of our business. It's all the way from collecting in a single way all of the data we use in design, which then allows us to automate design, allows us to apply machine learning to what we do. And just speed up, reduce errors, reduce TQs on site. All of it. It's most important that we influence what happens when a project gets built, because that's where things tend to problems manifest themselves. So our whole design transformation program is built around that, making that process much more efficient. Our other big moves, digital twins, which we're already winning projects in with clients, which is fantastic. We've got our digital program management offer, something that's very close to my heart, actually. After working on a major program last year, I think the opportunities to apply technology to improve projects and program management are massive. And then the thing that underpins everything, our common data ecosystem, which is the thing that draws all of our information together and allows us to apply the insightful tools on top of the data we've got. So we're pretty clear on the things we're doing. I think some are more mature than others. So design transformation's been a thing we've had going for a couple of years now, and we already have design libraries that capture all of the objects that we use in 3D BIM. We have automation already happening. We have robotic process automation, AI insights. So all of those, that's quite a long way on that program, and the rest and those other things are starting to move quickly too. So I think we're in just amazing shape. We've got a long way to go. The industry, frankly, the construction industry has a dreadful track record of productivity. For the last 25 years, productivity has been dead flat in the industry compared to a 30% improvement across the wider economy. So we've got a huge gap to close there, and I think Atkins will be right at the forefront of closing that gap.
And I think there's those two sides to it as well, isn't there? There's a lot of the work that we're currently doing, and it's about how do you also make how do you use technology to make what we're currently doing better, and then some of some of the items you're talking about, which is sort of the forward thinking, how are we going to actually excel and be leaders, whilst also trying to improve our just everyday work that we do all the time, but how can we make it more efficient? How can we use technology to help us do that? And if both of those things come together, then it's a kind of winning situation. So I'm aware of the time. We're kind of coming up to around 25 minutes. I knew this would happen. We've obviously got lots of topics that we want to talk about, but obviously we also want to leave some time for some questions from other people. But it's been a really great to talk to you today, and we've had some insightful conversations. And I guess to sort of end on a positive, what would you say your sort of most rewarding moment has been in your time as CEO to date?
Cool, gosh, there are a lot of things. I think probably just the collective response of our company to the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
and then probably within that, probably one of the nicest things is our, how our staff have really tried to support each other. Our teams have tried to support each other. There's always a worry when it's in my position that, what should I be doing? How should I be helping everyone? How should they all be? How should we be keeping everyone? How, we have a massive focus on well-being, don't we, Rose? You'll know that. And how what should I be doing to make that happen? And just because of the proactivity and smartness of a lot of our people, that a lot of that has sort of grown from the bottom up, which has been great to see. And I'll give you one example, which was, I think when some of our graduates saw that we were going to cancel our summer placement program because we just couldn't execute it, we couldn't bring people in. Our own graduates stepped in and organised a virtual summer placement for people who were going to miss out on that because of the pandemic, because they didn't want people to miss out on that great opportunity that they might have had with Atkins. And I think that's just in my position, it's just wonderful to have staff who take the initiative and get on and tackle problems like that. So that's one of the things I think that sticks with me that I've seen.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's been a kind of eye-opening, really, isn't it? When you start to, I think I've personally seen my colleagues on a different level. Some of those barriers that you might normally have they're sometimes broken down, and you actually get to see the sort of real people that you're working with, just from being in that home environment. So I think it's in many ways actually brought teams together. And that, I'm sure, is a nice thing to see, and hopefully it will that culture and that sort of way that we work will carry on into next year, definitely. And
hope so.
So yeah, I guess the counter question then would be, what would be your sort of biggest lesson learned? Let's put it that way. In the last year, what would you say?
I think I talked at length earlier about our, the ability to change rapidly and widely if we want to. That certainly is a massive learning that I think we all just need to remember, because it's so fresh in our memories that we need to stay on top of that and keep it front and center. I talked about that at length, so I'll try and think of something else. The biggest lessons learned. So gosh, I think there's just there's so many things, unexpected things, aren't there? As soon as you think you've got a lid on, as soon as we thought we had a lid on the pandemic and we came out of the first lockdown, we stopped doing a number of the virtual social things, didn't we? Because there was no need, because we were all coming back to the office. And then all of a sudden it spiked up again and we were back into lockdown. And I think just that, I think the level of uncertainty that we've all dealt with this year is massive. And I'm not sure how. I don't like to be negative and talk about bad feelings we might have after the pandemic, but I think there's going to be there's going to be quite a lot to consider, isn't there, as the economy in the world opens back up again and we all sort of get back to normal. It's been quite a traumatic year, I suspect, and we'll all look back on it like that.
I think I know we spoke about well-being and sort of mental health, but I think initially we spoke about mental health and we knew it would have an impact, but we weren't quite sure how. But these things take time, unfortunately, and this year has gone. It's been a really difficult year, and many people will have really struggled, and ultimately those things won't just sort of go away. And if the pandemic goes away and we come back to work, there will be lasting effects, I guess. And it's about being mindful of that, and working out how we're going to sort of be how we're going to appreciate the fact that it doesn't just go back to normal overnight, actually, and some of these will have a longer term effects that we'll have to work on.
I think that's dead right.
Yeah. And I guess, so next year, in a positive, is there anything in particular that you're sort of looking forward to, hopefully with this all behind us?
Gosh, I'm looking forward to it. I think on a personal level, also getting out of my front room would be a good start. I think just getting back together with my team, getting a chance to we have our meeting every few weeks, don't we, Rose, with you and a number of your colleagues. It'd be great to see you guys in person. I think going on a holiday would be nice, wouldn't it, at some point?
Yeah.
Just, maybe even getting out of England, so the UK.
Yeah, so nice.
Yes,
Yeah, I think a
simple
holiday is
thing.
probably the most true one there. That's definitely one I'm looking forward to. Right, so just a couple of questions. We've got great to hear some the support for the early careers at Atkins. It will give so many students hope for the future. What do you think graduates? Do you think graduates will start work next year in an office or virtually? So I guess that's sort of a question for you, but one that we've briefly touched on earlier about the fact that you expect it, I guess, to be likely to be a bit of both.
Yeah, I think it looks like I think pandemic wise, it looks like there's the talk of March, isn't there? Which I mean, personally, it strikes me as quite odd. Actually, there's talk of a vaccine next week and then a lockdown until March. So I think I don't blame the government for hedging their bets between when things will get back to normal. But I think we could probably say by March, April time, things will be back to normal. So if you start after that time, then you'll hopefully be back to having a fairly normal, typical, let's call it, start graduate induction, early careers induction to Atkins. But in that time, in the first half of the year, and in the first quarter of the year, we'll work. One of the main reasons we've given for our people to go back to the office if they need to throughout this time has been early careers staff. So we've looked at we're very aware of the support that early careers staff need, and that's one of the prime reasons why we've kept all our offices open right now, actually.
Yeah. And we're getting quite a few questions actually around sort of graduates, and I guess it applies to everybody really, about how can you stay involved and networking whilst working remotely, and how can graduates make themselves feel more visible? And I know that's one from a personal point of view that I've definitely struggled with initially, because sometimes you can have a day where you've just spoken to the same people in your team, and actually that variety of people that you speak to suddenly goes down. I think it comes to sort of the digital stuff. So I know personally from Microsoft Teams, for example, I have lots of different teams there. So there's actually groups of people you can connect with very quickly. It might be your practice, it might be your project. It could be, as you said, like a network like BAME on Yammer, for example. And I found far more now than I did before. I'm connecting in those environments.
That's interesting.
So I will now much more likely to engage in conversations over a post or or an event or things like that. Whereas before I might not have done that quite in the same way. And I think that way you're starting to increase that pool of people that you connect with on a daily basis. So I think that would be my advice anyway, is to actually make that part of your day and spend the time doing that. Whereas before it might not have been something that you put as much time into doing.
I think that's great advice, Rose. We've got a number of, at least in Atkins, and I suspect most companies have these days, lots of channels to get involved in, and that maybe haven't been particularly been used a lot by a small number of people in the past. And so using those to your advantage right now, and and I think some of the best things we've probably had going on. We do the formal things, don't we? We do all staff calls, we do team calls, but some of the informal things we've had going on, like just evening drinks.
Yeah.
A murder mystery thing I turned up at with the team last week. There's lots of more fun things I think I would try and get involved in. And if your team isn't doing that, then ask your team, your manager, to do them.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's even things like, make sure your camera's on when you're having a conversation with people. It's quite easy to sometimes, hide away a little bit and not necessarily engage as fully as you might. So by having your camera on, speaking up in calls, speaking up in meetings, and as you said, reaching out to people for things that you're interested in. I think that's, especially if you're a graduate or an apprentice and you're just starting a new job, that's, I know, quite hard because you don't know people. But even myself, I'm working with people that I've actually never met, but I see them every day and I feel like I know them. But that's because now I am video calling them every single day. But it's making that effort to do that, and kind of, it sometimes feels a bit unnatural, doesn't it? Because if you're not used to it, it's a bit strange. But I'd say that would be my advice. So yes. Now I know we're slightly over, about 5 minutes over. I know that there's one. We'll do one final question before we wrap up. I'll just we'll hit you with a heavy one on sustainability. So we had a question through from Smith there. So curious to know what your approach on sustainability is as climate change is on all of our minds. And this is something I did want to speak about. And I know we've discussed it between ourselves. So yeah, can you just, I guess, give us a bit of a final?
So in a nutshell, Atkins, we see ourselves as playing a big part in tackling climate change, in getting to net zero. Given the skills and capabilities and breadth of what we do and the brain power we've got, we have to be, and we are central to a lot of the solutions, whether it's from nuclear power to wind power to decarbonising construction to changing the way we travel. So we see ourselves as absolutely central to that. We'll be making quite a big announcement soon about our commitment to when we will be net zero as a company. So look out for that one. But I think that, most importantly, this is typical of Atkins and how we work. For me, if you look at if you go away and search up engineering net zero, that's the name the name we have and the work we associate with getting to net zero. Go and read our report, Engineering Net Zero, and you will see that rather than sort of just talking about the problem as many do, we set out the practical challenges, such as we will need to double electrical generation capacity between now and 2050. And some of the ways that the country can do that, the UK can do that. So that to me, that's Atkins in a nutshell. That we've got the skills and capabilities. We know there's a problem, and we've gone out there and we're suggesting ways that it can be fixed rather than just talking about the problem. So that's I really like that about Atkins, because it's the substance part to solving the problem, and it's a promise sheet. It's a really readable report. I read it myself, and just that shows what all the things that we will be getting involved in as a company to tackle net zero.
That's great. Thank you very much, Richard. I think that's all of the questions that we will have time for today. So thank you everybody very much for joining. It's been a really, really useful session, and yeah, I've really enjoyed it. So thank you for your time, Richard, also.
Thank you, guys.
That's great. And yeah, have a great Christmas, everybody. And yeah, here's to 2021.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.